anti-positivism. Basically, this video is going to be about the anti-positivism. Essentially, it is a term that has emerged in the 19th century and still has an influence on the contemporary social science. Basically, the idea was that when the forefathers of social thought, such as Auguste Comte, have been offering the idea of social science as actually a possibility. For example, in the mid-19th century, the Comte was offering the idea that one should be observing social patterns similar to other sciences which were emerging or developing at the same time, and be sort of an objective observer. That positivism was essentially saying that there are things that one can state in a positive way about the social world, and that these things outside of the subjective world of an individual person can be observed and described in their turn. And then, in contrast to that, such figures as Max Weber from the German School of Sociology, emerging also in the 19th century, early 20th century, were actually rejecting the whole point of the objective social science and saying that maybe the subjective perspective of the individual in a given situation, in a given setup, must be always actually paid attention to. And that was basically the whole idea of Weber's understanding as a notion, as basically a whole approach to understanding individuals, epochs, institutions, situations, etc., etc. And then one should also not forget that essentially Karl Marx was writing at approximately the same time as Auguste Comte in France, and Karl Marx was actually also rejecting positivism as an approach because he was actually thinking in conflict theory terms. Basically, Karl Marx would say that essentially struggles between classes or groups were the main motor of social processes, and so that one would understand way better what is going on in society if one thinks about it in terms of maybe individual interests, which are close, way closer to the maybe anti-positivist, let's say anti-positivist point of view, and then similarly to that, given that Karl Marx was writing in German, his main works and his main output, and one can also say that in the German social science tradition, such as with Georg Simmel, who was also an anti-positivist, who was saying that essentially one needs to be paying attention to the subjective side of things, to how one can actually approach and understand any given phenomenon from the psychological point of view. Essentially, Georg Simmel is probably one of the more important figures in social psychology because he was thinking about the interrelations, economic phenomena from the subjective point of view. His philosophy of money would be some sort of social psychological understanding of economic processes or phenomena, and in contrast, very much in contrast to the philosophy of positive sociology, which was actually being proposed by Auguste Comte in France, and one can conclude that essentially those two opposite point of view are still important for the contemporary sociology, because one can broadly state that there is the quantitative school of sociology on the one hand, which says that one can observe empirical patterns of behavior, one should strive to quantify as much as possible and then analyze quantitative data using very complex analysis approaches. And then there is, in contrast to that approach, the qualitative approach to social science, which always says that one should always pay attention to the narrative, to the qualitative data, to what individuals say in the given situation, and that would be one of the main avenues of understanding individual perspective, what people say via, let's say, open-ended interviews, via essentially qualitative data, which also require qualitative methods for the analysis and collection, so that one could actually come close to the non-positivistic way of understanding a phenomena, social world, etc.